welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about Black books by Black authors because it is Black History Month. If you didn't know, February is Black History Month and it's halfway through February. You might be worried about fitting these books in this month. Don't you worry, you can actually read books by Black authors all year. I know, great, isn't it? So I have a few different genres that I'm going to talk about today, ones that I'm typically interested in, and I'm going to talk about first books that I am recommending that I've already read, and then books that are on my TBR. I'm also going to be breaking up fantasy into YA and adult because there are so many that I'm excited about. We are going to start with some YA fantasy. We have two series that I can talk about that I've at least started, and then the rest are just on my TBR. The first one is Legendborn. This is by Tracy Deonn. The second book is Bloodmark. The third book comes out in March. I'm extremely excited for it. This is such a cool and unique series. It's Arthurian magic, Southern Gothic. Bree, our main character, is 16, but she's in an early college program and is Arthur in this situation. This is probably just a me problem, but I haven't read a lot of Black stories that are also dark academia, and this feels very unique to me. The relationships are really interesting, the magic system is very cool, and I would absolutely recommend this. I have not gotten to Bloodmark yet, but I'm planning on doing it this month so that I am ready for Oathbound. The next book is Immortal Dark by Tigis Girma. This is also an academic fantasy. It's vampires, it's an all-black cast, and it's so good. Our main character, Kidan, is looking for her sister. She cannot find her, and in order to try and find who has taken her, who she thinks has taken her, she has to live in this house with the vampire that she is pretty sure has stolen her sister, and also go to this college so that she can live in this house. A lot of the customs that are set up are in order to achieve certain tropes, but I don't mind that at all. It's so fun. I also don't think that this should be YA. It's kind of spicy. It's too spicy for YA. It should definitely be at the very least new adult, but I am loving it. I really love our main character. She is resourceful. I'd say, for example, she encountered a locked door. What did she do? Find an axe and axe down that door. And I just love that about her. The first book that I want to talk about is Blood Trials by N.E. Davenport. This is the first book in the completed The Blood Gifts duology, and this is about a girl who has to compete in these trials. She lives in a very misogynistic and racist world, and it is a blend of fantasy and sci-fi. This sounds right up my alley, and I'm very excited to get to it. So Let Them Burn by Camilla Cole is a Jamaican-inspired YA duology that is recently completed. It's about dragons, and she has to basically choose between her people and her sister. And I actually got to see Camilla Cole and get my book signed and stuff, and she's a gem. She is so fun. And I haven't gotten to the book yet though, but So Let Them Burn, that is a crazy title. I am extremely excited for it. I'm also probably going to tell you that I'm extremely excited for all of these books. I'll try not to say it again, but just know I'm extremely excited. Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi actually just got picked up for film, and the cast is absolutely stacked, so I must get to this soon. This is a world where they took away their magic and they're trying to get it back. They're trying to get their freedom back, and this cover is so good. And just based off of the cast of the movie, I'm excited about it, but I already did want to read this book anyway. Next, we have the Raybearer duology, and just like, those covers are so good. This is by Jordan Ifueko, and this is about a girl who was raised in isolation, and now she has to compete in trials in order to get on a part of this council. But her real goal of getting on this council is to kill a person in power in order to get revenge, I think. It sounds extremely good. I have been thinking about these covers for so long and just haven't gotten to them. I am excited, and a lot of my mutuals love this duology. Next is The Gilded Ones. This cover is also stunning. This is by Namina Forna. I believe that this is a completed trilogy, and this is about 16-year-old Deka, and she has to take this blood test basically to see if she can live in her village. If you have red blood, you're good, but if you have gold blood, you're seen as impure, and she is seen as impure. Obviously, she has the gold blood, and she joins this army of other girls like her. Otherwise, her fate is worse than death, is what it says. So she joins this army. It's kind of her only option, and She is still fighting for her people. I just love a YA fantasy sometimes. They don't always hit, but when they do, it's so good. Next is Pet by Akwaeke Emezi. I don't know if this necessarily fits in YA fantasy, but it is targeted towards a younger audience. This is about a girl who can see monsters, but nobody else can. Nobody believes her. And I know it's won awards, so many people love it. It's an important story, and I've just been meaning to get into Akwaeke Emezi's books in general. Their books sound so good. Last book for this category is Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhorse. I actually only know 2 things about this book, and that's that I loved Rebecca Roanhorse's adult trilogy, and I saw on one list one time that this was compared to Buffy the Vampire Slayer, so I need to read it, obviously. This is about a climate apocalypse where the water levels are rising and there are both gods and monsters roaming this world. She is a monster hunter and kind of has to get this ragtag group together in order to fight these monsters. It sounds very Buffy, and I loved Rebecca Roanhorse. For fantasy, and obviously who we have to talk about first for fantasy, this is an N.K. Jemisin fan account. The only books that I've read by her so far are the Broken Earth trilogy, which I loved. I still think about the way the first book is told, the 3 perspectives that we get. It's so good. It is about a world that repeatedly experiences different climate apocalypses, and there are people who have this like tectonic plate earth magic, and they are forbidden. They are no good. And also just a mother's love for her children. This is such an incredible series, and it is one of the only, I think it's the only trilogy that has consecutively won the Hugo Award 3 times for each book, and it's very obvious why. It is so good. I also want to read her city duology. This is about the different personalities of the neighborhoods of New York. I am kind of New York and London agnostic when it comes to fantasy. They don't really excite me, but if N.K. Jemisin wrote it, I want to read it. Also, the Dreamblood duology, which I haven't heard super great things about, and the Inheritance trilogy, which I have heard really great things about. I can put the synopses on screen if you're interested. Next is the Between Earth and Sky trilogy that I've already talked about by Rebecca Roanhorse. I think that this is one of the most underrated fantasy series that I have personally read. This is about 3 different people's intersecting stories and what they will do for their religion, and that moral line between the real world, the people that they're actually involved with, and their religion. And it's just so good. I want to read you the opening line of Black Sun, because if that won't convince you, I don't know what will. Today, he would become a god. His mother had told him so. This isn't a spoiler, it's in the first chapter of the book. But his mother sews his eyes shut so he can become the prophet of sorts that he's destined to be. The magic system in this is cool. It goes over very interesting topics. Giala, who is on the cover of this book, is one of my favorite FMCs ever. The romance in this book that is very much a subplot is also so good. The yearning is top tier. The second book does suffer a little bit from second book syndrome, but it didn't really take away from my enjoyment from the series overall. A Master of Jinn by P. Djeli Clark I feel like is so unique. It's sapphic, it's a murder mystery situation, it's a historic steampunk fantasy set in Cairo, and we're following Fatma as she investigates these series of murders with the help of her girlfriend and this apprentice that she does not want. It's so good. It's such a unique story. I think that P. Djeli Clark does a great job at involving humor in his stories. I love this. It's also a standalone. There's novellas associated in the world, but you can read this as a standalone. Faithbound by Sarah El Arifi is the first book in an uncompleted trilogy, although Cursebound did just come out. This is about 2 elven sisters who get trapped in the world of Fae, and they have to figure out how to survive. There are these soul animals that Fae bond with, and I thought that that aspect was extremely unique. The rest of this book, though, is pretty tropey, pretty predictable, but I enjoyed it. There's just something about it that was so consumable. I loved being in this world. In the Shadow of the Fall and At the Fount of Creation by Toby Ogundiran is a novella duology about an acolyte that gets thrust into this war and she has to save people. I thought that it was a pretty decent duology. The second book is definitely better than the first book, but they're very short and I think they're worth a read. Sorrowland by River Solomon is not just fantasy, I would say that it's horror too. At the very least, a lot of horrific things happen. We follow Vern, who has escaped a cult with her twins that she basically escapes and then births them almost immediately. When she escapes, she's only 15, and we've followed her for at least like 5 years. I think her twins are 5 or 6 at the point that I'm at in the story. She's also going through this transformation of sorts, and I'm not going to talk about it too much because it happens more so later in the story, but it's this heartbreaking situation where she has to take care of her kids and just barely survive and scrape through, and she does the best with what she has. This is so beyond unique. I am really enjoying it, but it's very heavy. I would look up trigger warnings before picking this one up. Let's talk about adult fantasy books that I haven't read yet but are on my TBR. Obviously, we have to start with Rage of Dragons. I don't know what this is about, other than that it is a grimdark military fantasy, and the 3rd book comes out this year. This was also originally indie published, and Orbit picked it up, which is really cool. Another one by P.J. Clark that I haven't quite gotten to yet is a novella, or at least a very short book of his, The Dead Cattail Assassins. This is about assassins who have been resurrected in order to be assassins. And I know that it's also funny. I went to his book tour, his signing for this book, and P.J. Clark himself is so funny. So I imagine that this one will be as well. Son of the Storm by Suyi Davies Okungboa keeps staring at me every time I go into a bookstore. I love the cover of this book, and we are going to find out what it is about together because I don't actually know. A sweeping tale of violent conquest and forgotten magic set in a world inspired by the pre-colonial empires of West Africa. That sounds good to me, and again, I love this cover. It is a trilogy, though. It does not look like it's completed yet, if that's something you're not into. Another book that I think the cover is absolutely stunning, and I have no idea what it's about. It went on my TBR because I think the cover is stunning, is Masquerade by O.O. Sangoyomi. Let's find out together. Also set in a wonderfully reimagined 15th century West Africa, Masquerade is a dazzling lyrical tale exploring the true cost of one woman's fight for freedom and self-discovery and the lengths she'll go to secure her future. You can't tell me that you don't want to read that book just because of the cover. It looks so good. Next is horror. I was struggling a lot to find horror written by Black authors, and that was a skill issue. That was a me problem. I have since found a lot that I want to read. I have a couple that I've already read and I'm excited to recommend, but most of these I will not have read, but I hope to this year. And a lot of the recommendations that I did get, I'm going to put their Instagram account up here. They focus on horror written by Black authors, and a lot of the recommendations that I had never ever heard of came from them. First, we have another P.J. Clark, Who's Surprised, love him so much, and that's Ring Shout. This is set in 1915, and it is about a group of Black women trying to survive the KKK. But the KKK are more than just awful, racist pieces of shit. They also transform into these superhuman monsters. The commentary in here is good, the horror in here is great, and I really enjoyed it. This book is so short, but there is so much in it. A book that just came out, I'm almost done with, and I am pretty sure that it's going to be a super solid 4-star book for me, is Listen to Your Sister by Nina VL. This is about an older sister who has given everything to her 2 younger brothers, and they could give less of a shit. They just expect it from her. They are not thankful at all. She reaches her breaking point after the youngest one does something truly heinous, is going to get the law involved after a protest, and they go into this cabin in the woods, and then she traps them in her nightmare with a bunch of past versions of herself, and they are, where I'm at in the story, learning their lesson right now. And the horror in it is good. I'm an only child, but I think the sibling dynamic is also super interesting, and I don't know, especially for a debut, I love it. Also, if you can't tell, we are racing the sun setting. We also have Jackal by Erin E. Adams. This was kind of a folklore story. It's about a woman who goes back to her hometown where Black women regularly go missing, and then when someone very close to her has this happen, she kind of investigates and learns what is happening. It's kind of werewolves, but kind of not werewolves, and I thought it was really decent. She's also coming out with a new book this year that I will be picking up. It's definitely more thriller than horror, but I liked it. Okay, the rest of these are going to be books that are on my TBR. Obviously, We have The Reformatory by Tana Nareeb-Dew. I do want to read her entire backlist, but this one specifically is the one that I'm most interested in. This is a historical fiction about a boy who gets sent to a school for boys, the Reformatory, and there's also ghosts, and he gets sent here because of something that's not his fault. And he's living in the Jim Crow era, and there's the horror just of that, but also the supernatural horror. This book got put on my radar during the Goodreads Choice Awards, and this is the only book written by a Black author and also a Black woman that was in the horror category at all, and that's This Cursed House by Del Sandine. We're going to read the synopsis together. In this Southern Gothic horror debut, a young Black woman abandons her life in the 1960s Chicago for a position with a mysterious family in New Orleans, only to discover the dark truth. They're under a curse, and they think she can break it. I will be reading that. Yes, I will. It is a novella, The Murders of Molly Southbourne by Tade Thompson. This was recommended to me quite a while ago, and I just keep pushing it off, so hopefully I can get to it soon. Every time she bleeds, a murderer is born. For as long as Molly Southbourne can remember, she's been watching herself die. Whenever she bleeds, another Molly is born, identical to her in every way and intent on her destruction. Molly knows every way to kill herself, but she also knows that as long as she survives, she'll be hunted. No matter how well she follows the rules, eventually the Mollys will find her. Can Molly find a way to stop the tide of blood, or will she meet her end at the hand of a girl who looks just like her? That sounds excellent. I actually need to go read that right now. Johnny Compton is an author that I want to read in general, but specifically the one that I think I'm interested in is Devils Kill Devils. This is about a woman who has in the past been protected by a devil, but then it kills someone that she loves, and now she has to find the evil within. That sounds really good. Maybe I'll say that all of them sound really good. Victor Laval, again, another author that I want to check out in general, but specifically The Devil in Silver sounded really good to me. This sounds like it's a goofy cast of characters, with the main character being a man who is in a psychiatric ward who doesn't need to be there but also can't quite remember the crime that he's committed. And it's also haunted by this entity with a bison head that tries to kill you. Alexis Henderson is also an author that I've been meaning to get to forever. I think the first that I'll pick up by her, because I didn't hear great things about An Academy for Liars, is House of Hunger, which I'm pretty sure is like Southern Gothic vampires. Flowers from the Void by Gianni Washington. All I know about this is that I love the cover. So again, let's read the synopsis together. Oh, it's a collection of stories. Hauntingly macabre and piercingly insightful about loss and loneliness, these Gothic short stories lead us into a labyrinth of other possible worlds, each one darker than the last, and yet all fearfully close to our own. Gianni Washington explores the limit of intimacy and empathy with the vivid intensity of your worst nightmares. Yep, that'll be for me. Model Home by Rivers Solomon. This is about a group of siblings who escaped their less than ideal upbringing, but when their parents die, they have to come back home to this house and figure out if their parents' death was an accident. I love the cover, and from what I know, it's a subversive haunted house story, which I've been more into haunted house stories lately, so I will be checking that out. It is for Witching by Helen Oyeyemi. Sounds like a combination of a haunted house story and also grief horror. I've been super into grief horror, so I'm happy to add this to my list. Next, we have sci-fi. I've read 2 books by Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah. The first one was Friday Black. It's a short story collection, and it's all kind of speculative fiction. It felt like an entire season of Black Mirror, but in a short story collection. The other book, obviously Chain Gang All-Stars, super acclaimed with good reason. This is commentary on the jail system. In this world, you can choose to either stay in jail or be a part of this gladiator circuit and fight to the death, and one person gets to go free, essentially. And we're also seeing perspectives from people who are watching this happen, and you find yourself becoming invested with these people that you are also despising in the outcomes of these fights. And it is just such an incredibly told story and super important. I think it should be required reading, honestly. This one I just finished this month is Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. This is a climate apocalypse story of a teen girl growing into adulthood during this apocalypse situation and just trying to survive while also writing a new religion that is basically just people caring for each other and helping each other. This was so good. This is one of my favorite apocalyptic stories of all time, and I am apocalyptic story connoisseur. Sky Full of Elephants by Sibo Campbell. This is a world where all of the white people have died, or at least most of them, and also about a father who was incarcerated because the woman that he created a child with claimed rape, even though that was not true, and also his half black, half white daughter kind of reconciling after her entire family and like step family have died. And they go on a road trip of sorts so that she can find more of her extended family. She's also dealing with this kind of cognitive dissonance about her identity, and her father is dealing with just so much anger about the past of his situation. It's very good. I gave it a very solid 4.25 stars. Next we have the first book in a duology is The Space Between Worlds. The last book is Those Beyond the Wall by Micaiah Johnson. This is about a girl that lives in a world where you can go to other parallel universes as long as your doppelganger is dead, and her doppelgangers are very bad at staying alive. This sounds very interesting and comes highly recommended by one of my mutuals, and I'm still hoping to get to it this month. A newer release, also I'm hoping to get to this month, is Death of an Author by Nydia Okorafor. This is about an author who is struggling, and she doesn't typically write sci-fi, but then she does start writing sci-fi, and these things start coming true, which sounds very good. And also, the naked cover is the book that she writes. That's so smart. I would also like to read Binti, which I'm pretty sure is also by Nydia Okorafor. It's a novella series. I also have Womb City by Lolo Samase, and this is an adrenaline-packed, cyberpunk, body-hopping, African futurist ghost story exploring motherhood, memory, and a woman's right to her own body. That sounds incredible. I put this off for a while because the reviews weren't great on Goodreads, but I don't care about that anymore. I'm gonna form my own opinion. I find out all the time about books that I don't like that have great ratings on Goodreads, so why not the opposite? Okay, these next few are books that I don't think fit into those other categories and aren't from genres that I typically read from. But one that I've read and really enjoyed was Luster by Raven Leilani. This is about a woman who enters this open marriage relationship with these two white suburban humans and their adoptive black daughter. She doesn't enter like a relationship with the daughter, and she enters a relationship with the husband, and then one day has to go to his house and finds out that he does have this adoptive black daughter, and meets the wife who is like not super keen on her, but then also develops this really weird relationship with the wife. It's so messy. None of the characters are likable. It's just kind of a contemporary story that I really liked. Little Rock by Akweke Emezi is one that I haven't gotten to yet, and this is one weekend, the elite underbelly of a Nigerian city, a party that goes awry, a tangled web of sex and lies and corruption that leaves no one unscathed. And I love this cover. Hate this cover, love this cover. We just have S.A. Cosby in general. I think I'm probably going to start with Razorblade Tears, but everybody seems to love his thrillers, and I am trying to find thrillers that I enjoy. I'm not a super big thriller girl, but I'm hoping I like these. Okay, and then we have a few nonfiction books that I just want to talk about really quickly. Hood Feminism by Mickey Kendall is something that I have read. It's intersectional feminism. It's super accessible, super important, and if you look like me and think you're a good feminist, you need to read this first. Next, we have Freedom is a Constant Struggle by Angela Y. Davis. Ferguson, Palestine, and the Foundations of a Movement. It's exactly what it sounds like. I am started through this but not finished with it. I'm excited to finish it. The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. This is about the prison system, and I don't know a lot about the prison system other than it's extremely unjust, especially towards people of color, so I think that this will be essential learning for me. And finally, we have All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Morrison. This is a YA memoir about a queer black boy growing up, I believe, in Chicago. And I probably won't read it this month, but again, you can read books by black authors all year long, and you should. This is probably going to be one of my longer videos, which is crazy because I am just telling you synopses of books, but if you have any other book recommendations for me, especially horror books by black authors, please let me know. If you made it this far, give me a little plant emoji for Parable of the Sower. Thank you so much for being here. Like and subscribe if you haven't, and I will see you next time. Bye!